Steve, good to see you on another Cherries in Focus. How you doing?
Yeah, very well, mate. Thanks for having me back on again. And yeah, let's get into it.
James Musselwhite, good to have you back on another episode as well. How you doing?
I'm resplendent. It's a joy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
He's always got a big word, hasn't he?
Love it. Absolutely love it. And Aaron, also good to see you back on the channel. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on again, as always.
So we're going to talk about Liverpool and Manchester City. Last week, we kicked off in the Carabao Cup after that good win in the Premier League against Burnley. And we had an opportunity to progress in the League Cup because it was opening up if you got through that round. We didn't quite get through the round, guys. I thought we put up a credible performance, but it did take a Darwin Nunez goal to seal it for Liverpool in the League Cup against us again. That's like 3-0 to them now over those competition games. James, was a good performance, though. I think every fan walked away from that probably seeing the best sort of overall performance that we were hoping to see from Andoni Iraola, and he did switch it up a little bit. 4 changes, I think. Alex Scott was in there. Justin Kluivert got his appearance and a goal. It was a good performance. We'll break it down a little bit further, but it ultimately was a loss in the League Cup.
Yeah, it ends our dream of reaching another final that we haven't reached the final yet. So not even another final, our first final since the Auto Windscreen Shield in 1998. And the chaos engine on the pitch was matched only by the chaos of the storm that headed over Dean Court. And I thought, like, to actually provide entertainment in those conditions was someone else. And like I said, it was a basketball match, which upset me a little bit. Later on in the week, if that makes sense, when I saw a certain player limp off at the Etihad, I just thought we've played him 3 times in a week, and one of those games was end-to-end chaos engine, and it may have long-term ramifications for us. We don't know yet, but out of the League Cup again, we can only focus on the FA Cup now, which I'm sure we will.
Definitely, Steve. Yeah, Alex Scott, I was thinking that if he was starting against Liverpool, he was probably going to be rested against Manchester City, which we'll come up to, but he was in there. It did feel like Andoni was going for this game. We've heard that he goes for cup competitions in La Liga in Spain, and it was like he had an opportunity to progress to the quarters. And as I said, it was opening itself up for Premier League teams. At least we're going to leave that competition. We ended up being one of them, but there were 4 changes in that side. But I was pretty happy with the side as we were in the tent behind the Ted Mack preparing for the game.
Well, we nearly weren't in the tent. It nearly got blown away, as James has rightly pointed out. But yeah, there was a few changes in there. But I thought, actually talking about the Storm, I thought that sort of helped us a little bit because it made that chaos engine of a game, as James has spoke about again. It was the every time the ball went up in the air, it was all over the show. Defenders weren't reading it. It was creating creating chances for either side, and which, like James said, made it a bit more of a basketball game. I thought we competed really well with Liverpool, albeit a slightly weakened Liverpool. It's not their first string, but, we went toe-to-toe with them. And, again, we went 1-0 down. And you think, against the big side, we could drop our heads easily here and put, think, this is going to be another paste in. And it wasn't. And credit to the lads, because I thought they played really well and showed that we can compete with the top sides. And it is a bit of a shame because I think that the cup draw has really sort of opened up. I did predict a 1-1 and we might sneak it on penalties, and I was so close to that until obviously the inevitable Darwin comes on and just the irony of us all jeering him for the bad touch and literally him just sticking 2 fingers up, taking a touch and whipping one in the top left ankle. Yeah, it was no right hand corner, wasn't it? Yeah. Showed us, but yeah, unfortunate because we could have got. We could have got through. Who did they get in the end? Sorry, I didn't. I sort of turned off.
West Ham at home, I think.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's a winnable game. So it's a shame, but we gave it a good fist.
Yeah, we'll talk about Justin Kluivert's first goal for Bournemouth, official goal, Aaron, in a bit. I mean, I was happy with the performance. I thought we were going to get to penalties. I predicted, I think offline, I predicted getting to penalties would be a good performance and a good showing. I do look at the goals, right, and do feel like we could have done a little bit more again, like many times this season. I've spoken about not being happy about having every player back in the box for corners. That's what happened from the first goal, and it ended up being a sort of second phase shot at the edge of the area, spilled by Radu, and I think Gakpo puts it away. And I might be really harsh here, Aaron, but for the second goal for Nunez, I just feel like Mepham lets him cut in on his right and get the shot away. It feels like you just send him to his left. I might be critical, but maybe could have done a little bit more. But you've got to hand it to Nunez once he gets your shot away.
Yeah, look, I mean, for the first goal, I think we've spoken a lot about our set piece defending, and it's not so much. I mean, I've got a bit of a bugbear at bringing everyone back, but if you're going to do that, then at least have someone on the edge of the area, because how many times have we seen us clear it and, you know, from the edge of the area, be it Burnley, Liverpool, countless other times I can think of. So
Arsenal.
if you're not going to, if you're not going to keep one or two up on the halfway line, then at least have someone at the edge of the box to kind of stop those shots. Second one, maybe a little bit harsh on Meps. I think. I mean, we saw last night that the Nunez 99 times out of 100 wouldn't have done what he just did, because he missed two absolute sitters last night against Luton, which didn't do us a great favour. But then he pulls a top draw one out against us, which is just typical the way things are going at the moment. But maybe showed him on the wrong side, but there's still a lot of work to do. So I don't think you can put too much blame them. I was really encouraged overall with the performance on Wednesday night. I really was. I came away thinking, you know, look, obviously I wanted to progress. I'd love to get to a cup final. I think that's kind of the one thing on the bucket list that we haven't done yet as a football club, get to a major cup final. So whilst a lot of people prioritise quite rightly staying in the Premier League, there's an argument to be said that, you know, you can never get rid of a memory of a cup final. Just getting there and everything that surrounds that. So yeah, as James said, we've still got the FA Cup, but I was really encouraged. As I said, I came away with quite a good feel good on the back of the Burnley result, the Burnley performance. We went toe to toe with Liverpool, as Steve said. I was really encouraged. They had chances, but we had chances. We missed, you know, two or three really, really good chances. But we gave ourselves a really good showing, and it was topped off. The best part of the night was I got back to Bournemouth in half an hour because the wind blew me up the motorway.
Steve, I'm always interested, Steve, when we're talking about defending, and I think we've had conversations about our defending from corners, but how can you have everyone back in the box and a free shot comes in for a second phase on the edge? I just don't get it, because I want at least a man on the halfway line. Maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but your thoughts on us defending corners and set pieces?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I used to have a real problem with the zonal marking. Now it just seems like what we're trying to do is just flood the box completely. So we're kind of just compressing the space and hoping that our dominance in numbers will see us through. But I think what it's done in a couple of games, and Liverpool's a prime example, is when that ball breaks to the edge of the box, where, as Aaron's pointed out, we don't seem to be marking anyone on the edge of the box. I've been saying this for weeks now. And we get on to Man City because it was apparent again there. And if you're a decent enough team with decent guys that can strike a ball, you put them on the edge of the box and it comes out. And this is where the first goal comes from. It's a strike. And having that amount of bodies in the box just creates a bit of carnage, chaos, because it can take a deflection, go all sorts of areas, and it just falls for Gakpo. And he puts it in. And so I can understand the thinking behind it, but it's not really paying any dividends. We're not really doing any marking. We're just sort of trying to rely on the numbers to get us out of trouble. And like you said, when you haven't even got an out ball, it's giving them nothing to worry about from an attacking point of view from our side. So they don't have to worry. They can just sort of hang around on the edge of the box, 2, 3, however many, and wait for that ball to get half cleared and have pot shots. I think it's a little bit, well, it's a strange tactic that I've never seen before, really. Don't get it. Don't particularly want to keep seeing it either.
No, but a lot of managers and a lot of football teams do bring everyone back. As I've said previously, Eddie Howe even did it when he was head coach of Bournemouth. But James, looking at the positives from that, your guy, the guy we all love at the moment, Alex Scott, did start in this fixture. He did pick up an ankle injury really early, and I thought that might see the end of that game for him. But he stayed on. He hobbled on a little bit throughout also. But he's showing that he's very good from set pieces. He's taking corners at the moment. That would lead to the goal from Justin Kluivert at the back post. First headed goal, I think, in his whole career. Great for Justin Kluivert to get a goal in his Bournemouth career. Alex Scott, though, giving us deliveries we've all been crying out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come on to Alex Scott in a minute. I don't need an invitation to talk about that man. But what I will say is this. Do you know that Justin Kluivert, if he scores in the Premier League, I think he'll be one of only 2 players to have scored in the top division of every sort of major major country in Europe. Is that a major footballing country in Europe? Is that right? Like La Liga? Do
you know? Do you happen to know who the other one is?
No, I don't.
Esteemed. No, I don't either. But
okay, right. It might be a first. I don't know. They were talking about it because I had the radio on for the first half, and I was listening to it. It was on Talk Sport, and Stuart Pearce was posed a question, and he can answer. And I think he might be the first one. I don't know. But what made that goal brilliant was the fact that a lot like. Oh God, I don't like saying things that get me in trouble. What made that goal brilliant was that Justin Kluivert didn't have to do a lot to score it because the delivery was so good. And we haven't had a good set piece taker since Stanislas, let's be fair. And he was inconsistent at best, not with his delivery, but just with his availability through injuries. It's lovely to see the fact that we might actually be dangerous from set pieces, because I used to sit back in my chair when we get a corner for the last 4 or 5 seasons, because there's just a mind-numbing inevitability for about 3 or 4 seasons under Parker that we were 3 or 4 seasons ago under Parker that we were just going to play short corners everywhere. And then there was just this complete lack of, I don't understand this in football either. They're professional footballers. They train every week, and you can't find one person in your team to deliver an in-swinging corner at pace. Mental. Like one person that might be able to do that. You know, you practice all week swinging these balls, kicking a football. That's your job. And we just seem devoid of having that player until Alex Scott turns up, and he looks dangerous. And this looks promising for us. We might be able to play him with dodgy knee and whatever. He might not have to run in a game to be valued to this team. We might be able to play him just to take corners. How about that?
So that was our exit in the League Cup against Liverpool. Good performance, and would take us on to the Etihad to play Manchester City. Now, fair play to any fans that went to this game, because we pretty much know what the outcome is going to be. It's going to be 14 attempts at trying to get a Premier League point against Manchester City. Now, Aaron, the interesting thing for me is what Andoni and his team he's inherited, was going to do in this fixture. Did he go with what served him well in the last 2, or would he switch it up? Switched it up. It looked like it was a back 3, back 5. That would actually become what we would see early on in the fixture. We've seen many head coaches, AFC Bournemouth managers, be burnt by the back 3 and back 5. I can only imagine it was an attempt to keep the score down. We did sort of do okay for 30 minutes, but once the first goal went in, the floodgates opened. And then you sort of have to think about whether that was the best strategy to go into this fixture.
Yeah, look, I think it's one of the damned if you do, damned if you don't, because I think ultimately, if we'd have really gone for City with a back 4 and tried to, attack them, they would have picked us off. We could have probably been the same result, and everyone would have been like, well, that's just naive and stupid. But what we did do was go with the back 5, certainly in the first half. And I think Andoni made a pretty apparent at the end of in his interview after the game that it was a back 5, but he didn't really want us to play the way we did in the first half. He made it quite apparent that we wanted to play like we did in the second half. Still a back 5, but we were markedly improved in the second half, albeit Man City kind of had won the game by then. I get that. But so I kind of think it's one of those ones where it probably wouldn't have made a difference, in my opinion. I'll be totally honest with you. And I think, look, they won the first half 3-0. They won the second half 3-1. So who knows what could have happened. We managed to hold them for 30 minutes, which I was delighted about. My worry in all these games is they go a goal up after 3 minutes, and then it's kind of, then what the hell do you do for the rest of the game? So I guess from that perspective, the back 5 or whatever and everything else worked, because they didn't score for 30 minutes. They didn't actually, apart from Haaland hitting the post, when Kelly actually did well to challenge him, they didn't look like they were going to... They didn't look like they had a real opportunity to score in that first 30 minutes, and we were frustrating them. And it was a matter of time. I get that. I don't think any of us really felt we were going to hang on. But what it did was it kept us in the game for the 30 minutes. Unfortunately for that, we had then a mad 7 minutes where they scored 3 goals. So, that was the killer, because it was bang, bang, bang. But second half, we'll come on to that. I thought second half, we probably played the way Andoni wanted us to, which is what he said. We scored an offside goal, which was quite tight. Dom hit the bar. We actually did score a goal. And I personally think, and it sounds ridiculous having lost 6-1, I personally think there were elements which actually weren't that bad. And I don't think it was a 6-1 game. It sounds ridiculous. They had 8 shots and scored 6 of them. They were massively clinical. And I think they're the most clinical team in the league by far. And they were absolutely clinical. I'm not one for XG. I know John's not here tonight, but I don't understand really any of this XG stuff. But XG said it was a 2. It would have been a 2 point something. So it wasn't a 6-1 game. but it is what it is. Personally, at half time, all I cared about was Alex Scott. I couldn't care if they scored 25 goals at that stage. But yeah, look, I think it's harsh to criticise the setup. I don't think, well, I don't know for sure. I would be amazed if Andoni sets up for any other game. He didn't at Liverpool, for any other game than maybe Man City away. I'll be very surprised if he does that.
Yeah, James, it feels like when you do set up with a back three or a back five, it's about how you approach when you get on the ball. Because if you just think about sitting deep, containing, it very rarely works. You might see it once in a blue moon. I mean, pardon the pun there, but you might see it every now and again. But really, you can't shut out teams like Manchester City. So you need to have some sort of output in a back three or a back five. If it doesn't really matter, though, because we know we lose every game to Manchester City in the Premier League, do you play Alex Scott 3 games in a row when he's played barely any football, when you know you've got bigger games coming up?
No, you don't. And I was more, probably the decision for me would be not to play him on the cup game midweek in the middle of a storm. I think that's the game I would have given him a rest for. I agree with Aaron. They were so clinical. And that lad Doku's just a hell of a talent. What a player, what a footballer he is. And those 7 to 8 minutes in the first half where they just tore us apart with real precision in front of goal highlighted the difference in class, not necessarily the way that the teams were set up. For my money, I think if we say that Liverpool and Man City are on a more even footing than we are to Man City, for example, I felt that we were more dangerous and more convincing away at Liverpool with that setup than we were away at Man City, especially for the first half. And I think with our record against Manchester City and the fact that it's a free hit, you can't go in kamikaze, but you can't compromise your beliefs and your ethics as a manager for the sake of one team that you're going to get beaten by anyway if you park the bus. So I think it's worth going for, particularly with players like Semenyo on the bench, who are the perfect players to play on the counter-attack when you're not going to have a lot of possession, over and above players like Christie, who are going to run around and close down space when you've already closed down space because you're parking men behind the ball. I would rather have seen Tavernier on one side, Semenyo on the other, as battering rams on the break and on the counter-attack. And I think that would have given us a real chance. But, I mean, like you say, it is depressing when you think about that fixture, because I'd be interested to know from Steve, like, I've been offered opportunities to go to the Etihad before and have turned them down because I just don't want to go. And I know that might make me sound like there's going to be certain fans that don't appreciate that, but I just don't. It's everything I hate about Premier League football in fact. So what motivated you, Steve? And I know that you're a very motivated guy and a very loyal Bournemouth fan, but how did you feel going to the Etihad, this past weekend? I'd be interested to know those thoughts.
Well, there's always that hope that kills you, James, as you probably know. And it's like, I think it's more that, had I not gone to Spurs away last season, I wouldn't have experienced that, and I presumed we would have lost that. Well, I did think we'd lose that game beforehand, but there's that small percentage chance that something might go our way and we'll upset the apple cart. And I think that's what it is that drives me on. Plus the fact that one of my boys hadn't been before, and it's quite a huge stadium for the Litlands to sort of be in awe of, sort of thing. But you're right, it's a pretty it's a horrific experience, especially when you're goaded by 14-year-old lads who are sort of positioned themselves intentionally right next to the away fans just so they can do it.
Get the badge in.
Yeah, all their with their mobile phones all game, going, putting it all on YouTube. It does great, but I don't know.
How bad was the City fans in the away end? Because I read about that as well.
Yeah, that was pretty bad as well. There was someone there. There was quite a few tourists. There was a big there's about, I'd say, probably dozen Asian gentlemen sort of walking into our entrance before the game. Quite clearly weren't Bournemouth fans. But if we haven't sold our allocation, it kind of, I don't know where you go with that. really what the answer is, because they're obviously wanting to sell tickets, and I guess that's what we're doing now, because we're seeing, in our home, and we're digressing a little bit from the game.
Sorry.
But no. But going back to the game, what was interesting what you were saying, because I actually didn't mind the 5-4. It was really a 5-4-1 sort of thing to me, and we just looked to be, for the first half an hour, I thought we executed it quite well. We were really limiting them on space. We were tight to them. We were tracking runners. We were doing everything correctly. I thought Zabani absolutely marked Harden out the game. Apart from that one chance he had with the header, didn't really think he had a touch. And then what we did have was it was going for the long ball on the break. Hit it up quick to Dom, Tav, or well, it wasn't so much Christie because he wasn't really up there, which is why I agree with James. We should have probably had Semenyo on the other side, so we had that outlet as well. Dom was excellent. His hold-up play was really good, and it's just a shame that we couldn't really support him as quickly as we wanted to. The one thing City did that I thought was very clever, because they obviously come up against this quite a lot, is that what they do when they go forward, the one player that doesn't go forward that much is Kyle Walker. And every time we hit a long ball up to Tav, you had Kyle Walker in a foot race with him, and he just beat him every time. And Tav's quick, but Kyle Walker is something else in the flesh, honestly. He is so rapid. And the guy's 32, 33, I believe. So, I mean, hats off to him. But it was obviously something they worked on, something they've obviously had shots across the bow before against, with teams doing this and trying to hit them on not leaving John Stones there, but leaving Walker there so that people can't hit them on the counter attack. And he just lapped it up. Getting on to the goals we let in, that crazy. I'm going to go back to individual errors, because until that point we were solid and we didn't put a foot wrong. First goal, I'm going to point the finger at Radu a little bit on this one, and we go back to the Neto thing of punching the ball. He has a cross come in, which is recycled for the goal. He's under no pressure. He can catch the ball. He chooses to punch it, goes out to the edge of the box. What we spoke about before, they got players on the edge of the box, and they just, it's a quick 1-2, and Doku's scored. Second one, Tavernier caught on his heels, watches Bernardo Silva, walks into the box, doesn't track him. Doku puts Mepham on his backside, really, spins him round and round in circles, and just plays a little ball to Bernardo, and he's got a side foot finish. And then I think that point, the heads went a little bit. The third one's a deflection, and then they really dropped. Then they changed the whole team. We had a little bit of a huff and puff in the second half for about 10 minutes. But then, breakaway goal again. Kirkes caught upfield. Simple ball behind. And we're 4-1. No, sorry, that was the fifth. The Foden one. Yeah, we're just... Rothwell, for me, just watches Foden and it doesn't track him. And let me not start... Well, I'm going to start about the sixth goal. Because I'm sorry, but if you can't get goal side of your man, then you shouldn't be a professional footballer at the Premier League level. And I'm pointing my finger at Max Aarons there. Because Nathan Ake's goal side of him, and he tries to get around him, and it's just basic, silly errors. If the first 30 minutes, we really didn't allow that to happen. And then we made a couple of mistakes, dropped the heads, and you can't do that against City.
Yeah. Aaron, talking of Aarons, I mean, Max Aarons did get an assist for Sinisterra, who come off the bench and got his first goal for AFC Bournemouth. Jaden Anthony apparently was in the stands, so not sure what he's thinking.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Sinisterra scores. It's just a shame it was 6-1. I'm sure we would go in there, want to give them a game. Some teams have given them games there. Look, Manchester City have won every game at the Etihad this season, and it goes even deeper into last season as well. They're very good at home. They're very good in the world, and it's a tough fixture. You just want to try and keep the number down and see if you can come away with what you had. Yeah,
keep the number down. It's kind of an air of inevitability of losing to City, and had we not made 2 or 3 individual errors. And Tom spoke about it on the back of the net thing. It's like, why do we never compete with them? And when you make silly mistakes like that game could have, it wasn't a 6-1 game. No. Like you said, they were clinical and we made mistakes that allowed them to be clinical.
But we do feel like we're talking like this every week, Aaron, before Burnley.
Yeah, well, players' mistakes, yeah, absolutely, and it must be infuriating for Andoni, because I think we're beginning to see, progress, and is trying to implement his philosophy. We certainly saw that a bit more against Burnley and against Liverpool in parts as well, and even some breaks yesterday and earlier on in the season. So, but it must be infuriating for him when individual errors are costing game plans, and against a team like Manchester City, you're not going to get away with it. You're just not. And yeah, it is difficult. I mean, it's interesting because people like Aarons and Kirkers actually, for me, are perfect wing backs. They are the perfect wing backs because they're both great going forward, both quick and excellent. So, and ultimately, Meps is playing well. Zabani, we know Kelly's best position is the left of a back three. I think we've always said that. So, we've got the setup for it. I don't want to see it more often than not, to be honest with you, but I don't think it was such a bad thing against Manchester City. I mean, regarding Alex Scott, you mentioned him earlier. I don't know. It's difficult. It wasn't a muscle injury. If it had been a muscle injury, if it had pulled a hamstring or a groin or whatever it might have been, or a quad, then I think a lot of fingers would have been pointed at playing 3 games in that short period of time. But it wasn't it wasn't a muscle injury. It was a contact injury, which we're still hoping, fingers crossed, isn't as serious as it looked at the time when he was crying down the tunnel. I mean, I think we all hanging on every word that everyone's saying at the moment, and from afterwards, Andoni said he was more optimistic at the end of the game, but until you have it scanned, which I assume is today, we won't know. So look, if he's out of the Newcastle game, we'll deal with it. If he's back for the Sheffield United game, then brilliant. Anything longer than that, then it's a problem. Anything long term, it's a massive problem. But yeah, I think they would have looked. I think they would have spoken to Alex. He knows his body as well. I think, as I said, if it had been a muscle injury, I'd have felt a bit more frustrated with that decision, but it was an impact injury which could have happened, I guess, to anybody at that stage. And unfortunately, Rodri came in and basically there's a big clash of legs there. But we're all keeping our fingers crossed.
James, for my sort of final thought on this before part 2 comes out later in the week, I think it makes it really interesting now what Andoni does going into the Newcastle and the Sheffield United game. Now he's sort of rolled this dice with the back 3 and the back 5. I'd love to know, James, whether this is something Andoni's literally always been thinking about when it comes to Manchester City, or whether he's had an influence from Tommy Elphick and Sean Cooper, because I'll keep highlighting that Iriola has none of his own real staff. He's right-hand man, hasn't got a work permit. He's only got a fitness coach. I would just love to know how they got to this thinking of a back 3, back 5. I'm not saying it's wrong, but you've not done it yet. And then suddenly you do it against the best team in the world.
Yeah. And it's bizarre that more isn't being made out of this issue with his team not being here. Does that make sense? You have to dig a little bit on social media to sort of find anyone really talking about it. I'm not sure any of the local press have really sort of made a thing of it. I mean, I would imagine it was Andoni's decision to go with that, and ultimately, it was to try and utilize these wing backs, in Aarons and in Kirkes. To try and get them as far forward as possible. From the times I've seen us play this season, it seems to me that they're pushing on. Aarons and Kirkes are showing no shyness in coming forward, but the actual communication and the play, the interaction with the wingers in front of them isn't quite there yet, in the way that the overlap seemed to happen naturally under wingers that we had in the past, fullbacks that we had in the past, working upside with Wilson and King and Pugh and all of that. When we were really firing, we had wing backs and wingers working in unison well together. And I don't point the finger of blame at anyone at that. That's just going to take time. It's a massive adjustment with the massive number of players that we've brought in to try and get them clicking and get them working together. They're not bad players. I believe with time it will happen. I don't think he's going to go back to a back 5 on very many occasions this season.
And Steve, that would see us fall into the relegation zone at the end of the weekend, because Luton got a draw at home to Liverpool. I still say week in, week out, we are not winning many football matches, but one win does get us back out again. And this is sort of pivotal to what's happening. But a Luton side that looked very familiar to a Bournemouth side that had a first season in the Premier League.
Yeah, and do you know what? Hats off to them, and that's no pun intended either. Literally dawned on me as I was saying that. No, I watched the game. It was they were good value for the draw, and they must have felt a bit heartbroken to have gone to a draw, because they really stuck in there and dug deep, and like you say, really showed some, you know, a togetherness, a team spirit, similar to what we had when we came up the first time with Eddie, with the group of players that have been together for a while, a few new additions here and there. Really like that left-sided winger they got. You know, he's just so fast. Kept leaving Alexander-Arnold in his wake. I can't think of his name at the moment, but really, really good. They got some decent players in there, and I said at the beginning of the season, I think they'll keep their heads above the dotted line. I hope it's not at our expense, but at the moment it looks like it's a 4-horse race. And although we could get out of the relegation zone, it literally I think there's a 5 or 6 point gap to Everton already. Which, you know, at this early stage, I hope that can be pulled back, because we want to pull some other teams in there, because, you know, to rely on one team, you know, one space, being available is a bit of a tightrope. Can I just make a point back to what I was saying earlier? Is that I'm not having a go at the lads for the weekend, but what I am saying, because I thought actually there wasn't someone that you would stick out and say had a really poor performance, and I think we did see what Andoni was trying to do with the goal. That was an overlapping fullback to the other side, you know, cross goal. And there were moments we weren't getting. But what I was trying to say was, you cannot make those sort of little lapses in concentration, have those little individual areas against a side as quality as City. That's all it was. I'm not having a go at the boys. I thought they gave it their best shot. And let's not beat around the bush. City have done this to many other teams, not just us.
Yeah, absolutely, James. But at the end of the day, we have to stop now, because I've said weeks ago that we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. And when you see Sheffield United now pick up their first Premier League win, it is going to get tighter and tighter as the season kicks on. And it's probably going to be a small number when we get to the end. There's many Premier League weekends to come, but it's probably not going to take 38 points to keep you up.
No, it's not. I've said it. I think it's going to be the lowest points total needed to stay up this season. One thing I will say is that so far, we haven't seen, to Steve's point, we haven't seen the team drop their heads. We haven't seen the team not come out and run and give 100%, you know, for the cause. I just think it's a matter of training, of drilling, of getting these systems and these formations and these plays in place, and then the quality will shine through. That's I fully believe that, and it's just going to take time. He's weathered the storm because he's got that win. He got that win, albeit against a very, very poor Burnley team. We were a bit giddy afterwards, but you know, on reflection, that Burnley performance wasn't great. Results will come our way, and it may only take that one result really for us to a bit of belief for the guys and allow us to kick on, I think.
Yeah, we did say, Aaron, last week. I know you weren't here, but we can't get too carried away. We were going to enjoy it. It's been a long time since we had a Premier League win, but there are games coming up. We're going to talk about one in part 2. There are going to be opportunities. Well, it's a tough fixture on Saturday, but there are opportunities coming up at Bramall Lane where we can pick up some more Premier League points.
Yeah, look, of course. Look, arguably, we've had our 2 hardest games of the season, Liverpool away and Man City away. Historically, for us, have always been real hard ones. You know, we seem to have, obviously we won at Spurs last year. We all seem to give Arsenal a bit more of a game, but yeah, look at those 2 of them have gone. They're done for the season. And I think, you know, I think there's lots to come. I think there's plenty of opportunities for points. As James said, there's not going to be a huge total needed. I've still got full confidence. We do look like we're adrift at the moment. Forest beating Villa also wasn't great. Took them away. In some respects, Sheffield United beating Wolves wasn't the worst thing, because, you know, yes, you want Sheffield United to keep losing, but if Wolves had won, then they're kind of almost out of it. So you want to try and keep as many teams in as possible. So yeah, lots of twists and turns to come, and not panicking yet.
Not panicking yet.
Sorry, Kirk. Sorry to jump in. Sorry, I forgot one point. We do want to. There is a need to do that though, because looking ahead at our fixture list, our final 3 fixtures are away at Arsenal, home to Brentford, and then we end away at Stamford Bridge at Chelsea. That's what May looks like for us. So if we can do what we did last season and get safe middle of April, that would be lovely. If not even sooner, that would be lovely.
So we may need some points soon, James. Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're saying, yeah.
I think it's a good point to maybe end part 1 this week in Cherries in Focus, episode 7. So you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel, do follow the podcast, do hit the like button and give us your thoughts as we talked about Liverpool and Manchester City. But we are going to now turn our attentions to part 2 later in the week. Thank you, Steve. Join me back for part 2, please.
Yeah, I might do if you behave yourself.
James, let's come back for part 2 and let's look at the Magpies and Eddie Howe.
Let's shake up this colour scheme. We'll come back for part 2.
And Aaron, if you want to do a colour change of your top, maybe not, but let's come back for part 2.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Let's onwards and upwards.
Thank you for checking part 1 out. We'll see you on the next one. Up, Cherries.
Up the Cherries.